Part 1 at the sound that froze the battlefield. Before soldiers ever saw it, they heard it. A violent metallic roar that tore through forests, villages, and trenches like a mechanical storm. It did not sound like ordinary gunfire. It sounded like fabric ripping across the sky. A furious tearing noise that seemed to last forever. Allied soldiers would later give it a name that captured the terror perfectly: Hitler's Buzzsaw. In the chaos of the Second World War, where artillery thundered and aircraft screamed overhead, sound was often the first warning of death. But the MG-42 produced something entirely different. Its rate of fire, an astonishing 1,200 rounds per minute, created a continuous stream of bullets so dense that individual shots could no longer be distinguished. Instead of separate cracks, the weapon produced a chilling mechanical howl that echoed through valleys and city streets alike. For men advancing across open ground, the moment that sound erupted meant that time had suddenly become very short. Imagine a platoon of Allied infantry moving cautiously through a forest in Normandy. Boots press into wet leaves. The air smells of damp soil and cordite from distant artillery. There is tension, but also silence. Then, suddenly, the sound begins. A violent metallic scream tears through the air as a burst of fire cuts through the trees. Branches shatter. Bark explodes. Dirt erupts around the soldiers' feet. In less than a second, dozens of rounds slice through the forest like invisible scythes. Men dive to the ground, hearts pounding, minds struggling to comprehend what just happened. The MG-42 was not simply a weapon. It was psychological warfare made of steel and engineering. Its terrifying sound alone could stop an advancing unit in its tracks. Soldiers who survived their first encounter often described the same feeling: helplessness. The sheer volume of fire pinned men to the earth, forcing them to crawl, dig, and hide just to stay alive. German infantry doctrine had been built around this very principle. Unlike many other armies that centered tactics around riflemen, the German squad revolved around its machine gun. The MG-42 was the squad's beating heart. Every soldier's role: a rifleman, ammunition carrier, assistant gunnery existed to support it. Protect it. Feed it ammunition. Keep it firing. When the MG-42 spoke, the battlefield changed instantly. Fields became death zones. Roads became traps. Entire advances could collapse in seconds under its relentless fire. Allied soldiers learned quickly that the only way to survive was to silence the weapon as fast as possible. Yet finding it was often nearly impossible. The gunner might be hidden in a ruined building, a hedgerow, or a concealed trench. All that could be seen was the impact of the bullets, and all that could be heard was that dreadful tearing sound. For the men on the receiving end, the MG-42 represented something terrifyingly modern. War had always been brutal, but here was a machine designed to deliver destruction with cold industrial efficiency. Steel parts moving with perfect mechanical rhythm. Belts of ammunition feeding endlessly into the chamber. A weapon that could turn entire landscapes into fields of suppression in seconds. And yet, for the German soldiers who operated it, the MG-42 was not merely an instrument of destruction. It was their lifeline. Their shield. Their greatest advantage against armies that often outnumbered them. To understand the MG-42 is to understand a weapon that shaped not only tactics but fear itself. A machine whose sound alone could dominate the battlefield long before the enemy even saw it. Part 2 at the birth of an industrial killing machine. The MG-42 did not emerge from a vacuum. It was born from the brutal lessons of modern warfare and the industrial realities of Nazi Germany. Earlier in the war, German forces relied heavily on the MG-34, a weapon admired for its versatility and precision. It was capable of serving as a light machine gun, a heavy machine gun, and even an anti-aircraft weapon. But the MG-34 had a critical flaw: it was expensive and slow to produce. The intricate machining required to manufacture the MG-34 demanded time, skilled labor, and resources that Germany increasingly lacked as the war intensified. Factories struggled to meet the demand for weapons as the conflict expanded across Europe and into the Soviet Union. German engineers faced a stark reality. They needed a machine gun that could be produced faster, cheaper, and in far greater numbers without sacrificing battlefield effectiveness. The result was a revolutionary approach to weapon design. The MG-42 replaced many of the finely machined parts of the MG-34 with stamped steel components. Instead of carving parts from solid blocks of metal, a process that consumed time and resources, manufacturers could press them quickly using industrial stamping techniques. This change dramatically reduced production time while maintaining strength and reliability. What emerged was a weapon that looked deceptively simple but functioned with extraordinary efficiency. The MG-42's roller-locked recoil system allowed it to cycle incredibly fast, achieving its famous rate of fire. The weapon's internal components moved with mechanical precision, each shot triggering the next in a relentless chain of motion. Yet speed alone was not its greatest advantage. The MG-42 was designed for practicality and the chaos of combat. One of its most innovative features was the quick-change barrel system. Machine guns generate tremendous heat when firing rapidly, and overheated barrels can warp or fail. German engineers solved this problem by allowing the gunner to swap barrels in seconds. With the simple motion, the hot barrel could be removed and replaced with a fresh one, allowing the weapon to continue firing almost indefinitely. For soldiers defending a position, this feature was invaluable. As Allied forces advanced, a well-trained MG-42 team could maintain sustained fire while rotating barrels and feeding ammunition belts. The result was a wall of bullets that seemed impossible to break. The design also emphasized reliability. Dirt, mud, and debris were inevitable on the battlefield, but the MG-42 was built to keep functioning even under harsh conditions. The weapon could be field stripped quickly for maintenance, allowing crews to keep it operational during long engagements. Production began in 1942, and soon the weapon began appearing across multiple fronts, from the frozen expanses of the Eastern Front to the beaches of Western Europe. German soldiers quickly recognized its power. Allied soldiers soon learned to fear it. By the end of the war, more than 400,000 MG-42 machine guns had been produced. Each one represented the merging of industrial engineering and military necessity. It was a weapon designed not merely to fire bullets but to dominate space, control movement, and reshape the battlefield. In the hands of a skilled gunner and a disciplined crew, the MG-42 became one of the most formidable infantry weapons ever created. Part 3 and the weapon that defined German infantry. On paper, the MG-42 was a machine gun. On the battlefield, it was something much more powerful. It was the center of German infantry doctrine. Every movement of a German squad revolved around this weapon, because commanders understood a simple truth: whoever controlled firepower controlled the fight. Unlike many Allied units where machine guns supported riflemen, German squads were built around the machine gun itself. The MG-42 was the main weapon. The riflemen existed primarily to protect it, carry ammunition, and maneuver in ways that allow the gunner to maintain fire dominance. A typical MG-42 team consisted of several men working in coordinated rhythm. The gunner operated the weapon, controlling its bursts and scanning the battlefield. Beside him, the assistant gunner carried spare barrels and helped manage ammunition belts. Other soldiers transported additional ammunition, often hundreds of rounds at a time, ensuring that the gun never ran dry. This coordination allowed the MG-42 to maintain sustained fire that could lock entire sections of terrain under deadly control. Fields, roads, and open hillsides became areas where movement meant almost certain death. Allied soldiers learned quickly that attacking a position defended by an MG-42 required careful planning and courage bordering on desperation. Part 4. The Buzzsaw on the Eastern Front. On the Eastern Front, where battles stretched across endless plains and frozen forests, the MG-42 revealed its full destructive potential. The scale of warfare between Germany and the Soviet Union was unlike anything Europe had ever seen. Millions of soldiers clashed across thousands of kilometers, and survival often depended on who could deliver the most devastating firepower in the shortest time. In these brutal conditions, the MG-42 became a weapon of terrifying efficiency. Soviet infantry assaults frequently involved large numbers of troops advancing across open terrain. When an MG-42 opened fire, its high rate of fire created a storm of bullets that could break these advances within seconds. Entire formations could be pinned to the ground by a single machine gun positioned correctly. Part 5. A fear on the Western Front. When Allied forces landed in Normandy in 1944, they encountered many weapons that defined German defensive strategy. Among them, the MG-42 stood out as one of the most feared. German machine gun nests were often positioned to cover beaches, roads, and open approaches. When Allied soldiers pushed inland from the beaches, they frequently ran directly into the devastating fire of these weapons. The MG-42's extraordinary rate of fire meant that even short bursts could unleash dozens of rounds in seconds. Soldiers advancing across hedgerows or open fields could suddenly find themselves trapped beneath a storm of bullets. Part 6. A legacy of a deadly design. When the war ended in 1945, many weapons faded into history. The MG-42 did not. Military engineers around the world recognized the brilliance of its design. Its combination of reliability, firepower, and manufacturability made it one of the most influential machine guns ever created. Post-war machine guns such as the German MG-3 would directly evolve from its design. Even decades later, the mechanical principles behind the MG-42 remain relevant in modern weapons. Part 7. The echo that never fades. The Second World War ended decades ago, yet the sound of the MG-42 still echoes through military history. Veterans who heard it never forgot it. Historians still study it. Engineers still admire its design. It was more than a weapon. It was a symbol of industrial warfare where engineering, tactics, and human courage collided on battlefields that changed the world forever.